Good morning. This music goes with the topic of instant payments, definitely. Good morning from my side. Good morning for all infintech guests, dear colleagues and friends. I'm pretty much pleased to continue this second day with the topic of instant payments, and as well, apart from instant payments, a view from the side of our dear regulators from the National Bank of Montenegro, National Bank of Albania, and together with Robert. Robert, thank you for this very interesting presentation and facts that you presented to us. We'll talk about SEPA, and we will talk about majorly about Western Balkan initiative to join the SEPA and what is the future of instant payments in this region. It's usually said that there is no boring topics, just the boring moderators. So I hope I will not be the one this morning. So let me now introduce my dear guests. Thank you, Robert, for joining the panel. From National Bank of Albania, we have today with us dear Ledia Bregu. Ledia is Director of Payments, Accounting and Finance Department at the Bank of Albania as of 2018, focusing on licensing, oversight and operation of payment system, as well leading national financial inclusion policies. In recent years, she has been spearheading the country's national retail payment strategy, as well as efforts of Albania to join the SEPA, marking the first country in the region to apply for SEPA geographical scope accession. Under her leadership in 2022, a new system for setting up payments domestically in euro was implemented, reducing fees by 5 times and saving to the economy imposing number of 97 million euros only in 2.5 years. So please, Ledia, join us on the stage. And one applause for the dear guests. I would now like to invite Mr. Andrija Jovović, Director of Payment System Sector of Central Bank of Montenegro. Andrija was part of the CKB till 2013. He worked on several positions there as a senior officer in payment system, as deputy director of branch, and senior officer in retail and risk department. As of 2013, Andrija is director of payment system sector in the Central Bank of Montenegro and one of the key person there for the acquiring SEPA, and he will today give his view on these very important topics. Andrija, please join us as well. So we will have today a chance to discuss, I would say, a topic of payments, which relies and actually connects pretty much well with all the topics that we mentioned yesterday, where we tackled lots of things concerned with digital transformation in the bank, transformation of value chain in the bank, transformation of processes and products, and finally, transformation of customer journeys. I prepared today for this part a little bit of slides, just to focus the attention of the audience to the importance of the topic and to possibilities which instant payments actually can bring to the economy. So just a short introduction. As of 2017, in the EU region, instant payments were introduced by the European Payment Council, but not as a mandatory ones. And as of January next year, it will be changed for the EU countries. So instant payments will be a mandatory payment as of January to accept the credit transfers, and I think as of October to process the credit transfers for all EU countries. For those countries which are not a member of EU, it will be, I think, around 2027 or something like that. But already worldwide, you can see here on this slide that instant payments actually, not just in SEPA zone, but actually worldwide have a very huge potential to grow. So from 2021 to 2030, they actually rise 10 times. And in SEPA zone, so these are the EU countries, and instant payments volumes per day, you see here that from 2020 to 2023, transaction volumes daily actually reached these amazing 2.8 million transactions per day. So I would start with maybe with Ledia and the experiences of Albania. So Ledia, what is your view, current status and plans and timelines for the instant payments systems in Albania? How does that fit within the overall SEPA strategy? Because for the instant payments, you need to set up some, let's say, preconditions and infrastructures and to be aligned with the SEPA, which is your actually, let's say, primary course. But what is actually currently the situation in Albania? What are your plans and what is your ambition as a regulator?
Yes. Thank you for having me. It's a true pleasure to be here today with you and share the panel with such distinguished guests, which I'm honored to have colleagues. Prior to getting to your question, probably just a small background on the Albanian payments landscape. We do our similar neighbors in terms of payments and developments in comparison with the European markets. And we try to do a lot in terms of, as a central banker, which on the point of view of the audience might be some sort of boring hat to wear, but you try as much as you can to be a catalytic role. If we go back in history, as history was a topic, a very good one in the first day of the conference, major market movements were made from the market players, meaning fintech, innovation, and then the regulator had to catch up. Now it's the role of the regulators to try and build some building blocks so that innovation can bring some value to the economy and to the growth. In Albania, we had 2017 a strategy, a midterm strategy in terms of payments, where instant payment was one of them, but not the only one, mainly framework, legal framework, procedural, new infrastructures to make sure that electronic payments are uptaken and the economy can go digital. Why is that? Because studies prove that not just for Albania, but for the whole countries, that cash economy and shadow economy cost very much to the economy. In our case, it's around 1.6% of the GDP. It's the cost of managing cash, meaning that at least 30% of shift from cash to digital, not just instant, but digital payments from cards, from credit transfer, they can bring a huge benefit to the economy. With that in mind, you can bring up the instant payment much more into the market and make citizens be included. Instant payments can be a very successful tool, but if you have a large population which is excluded financially, meaning they don't own a bank account or they don't perform, that they don't use a unique account for electronic payments, then your role of spreading it gets very limited. So it has to go in line, and I think Montenegro, Albania, and some other countries in the region have done a great job in trying to make the financially excluded included. In Albania, we had 40% of adult population which owned at least one bank account, and they were performing only 4 cashless payments per capita in a year, which is very few, meaning they could only pay water 4 times per year in average. Now in 2023, we have around 78% of the adult population having at least one bank account. But this is not all. I mean, you need that this account to be used electronically so that businesses and individuals can use it and economic growth can be driven from that. And also 21st cashless payments per capita from Albanian citizens, at least in the last year. So we achieved this. Now, instant payments, where do we stand? And why is it important? It's important because it's velocity of money. As fast as money circulates, besides the trucks and the import-export, which might have its own timing, the background of every financial movement, the payment side, is as important as the transfer of goods. In the European Union and the Western Balkans, they are working so much to make such transition smooth. But if it's not complemented with the payment side, then connections, business ones, cannot happen so rapidly. And why is velocity important? Because those who are merchants can have immediately the funds in their account so they can buy inventory and go on like that faster. In Albania, we are trying, piloting together with the neighboring countries to use an infrastructure which is for the moment offered by the Central Bank of Italy. For a small background, Bank of Italy is the owner and the, let's say, inventor of the instant payment infrastructure for the whole ECB or European countries. So they are trying to replicate it, make a small clone for the Western Balkan countries, for those that are, of course, interested. A bit competitor with you. And in this case, that would be some sort of win-win for our small countries. We understand from years that we are very small in comparison to the European markets, but we are very much connected. Import and export is more than half. 57% of our import-export is done with European countries. So there is a huge potential and relation, but not only going individually, rather they're all together. It's important to convey the message that as long as we work together in our small countries, within our countries, but also within the region, there's a huge potential that our power is greater and our voice can be heard. This clone can be an important milestone for our countries to implement domestic instant payment, to make our citizens included, to make sure that transfers happen instantly, within 2 seconds, or a bit more, let's leave them some room, and make sure that such merchants, clients, and businesses, which are doing a lot of work in the region and beyond, can benefit for all this digital environment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we will talk during the panel about these differences between instant payments clearing and settlement time and some other SEPA payments clearing and settlement time. In terms of these times for our region, especially for cross-border payments for Western Balkan countries, I would say that is a huge difference, because we are talking about difference in few days of clearing and settlement and something which is less than 1 minute for a SEPA credit transfer, or less than 10 seconds for SEPA instant credit transfer. So it's a huge difference. I would now go to see what our regulator actually has to say about all this. Setting up of the infrastructure for the SEPA requirements is not an easy task, and setting up of infrastructure for the instant payments is, we can say, a separate project, something like that, which needs at the bottom a very stable base for all these clearing and setting up mechanism which already can process transactions according to certain standards. So Andrija will, please, can you just tell us what is the roadmap for Montenegro and how the Central Bank of Montenegro is seeing all these things that are ahead of us?
Thank you, Danijela. Thank you for invitation. Our journey with instant payment, I can compare with this diagram which you present. We start with first researcher 2020, when our council adopted information that Montenegro need instant payments, and now we on a higher level with that. It's very demanding, and especially as Ledia mentioned, expensive project, especially for small country as we are in Western Balkan. We in Central Bank recognize that advantages, what I said. And of course, it was not alone in this. The same opinion came from Montenegrin society in one of a questionnaire organized by Central Bank with topic digital services. One of the main questions was which digital service would you like to see in Montenegro? And the most common response from citizens was instant payment. The similar responses of the companies. Instant payment was among top three voted services. And Montenegrin banks also expressed their opinion in favor of IPS. And according to one of previous our research, 80% banks answered that are interested in the complete, comprehensive solution of instant payment system. And after that, we start with this research as one of solutions which we evaluated in that period was Capsys. And that it was the beginning, some core system. Now I see that Capsys has right model solution which need every country. And we start analyzing different solution of IPS. And I could say some general conclusion is there no unique, universal model that can guarantee completely success. And first, we start with experiences of other countries which implemented instant payment. We contacted several partners and evaluated different practice. And the outcomes, I must admit, were quite distinct. And in some countries, the implementation was exceptional with the participation of all stakeholders, wide usage, different practical use case. And however, there are also countries their implementation of IPS was very slow, where the participation of banks were partial, where additional functionalities that simplify usage were not implemented from the start, as in your case. And also technological solutions available on the market differ among different vendors, as do the implementation models. We in Central Bank evaluated different implementation models, on-premises, service model, even some hybrid model as a combination of those two. And of course, all options have different operational, technical, and commercial aspects. And when we start prepare public procurement procedure and that activities, we heard for some new model. And it was last quarter last year. We heard from our dear Ledia and her colleague that they started negotiation with Bank of Italy, and we heard first time for TIPS clone, as we call this project. We asked them and Bank of Italy and ECB to join that negotiation. And today I would like...
Just to interrupt you, do you think that it really has a regional potential? So just to come back to what Ledia said and what you are now mentioning, so there is a certain potential within Western Balkan countries to actually go to the EU even before within the possibilities that SEPA will actually give us in terms of economy, which can actually become closer to some of the EU standards and EU markets through SEPA payments. So do you think that this story about Bank of Italy and possibility to make a TIPS clone in order to set up the infrastructure in the most efficient way has a regional potential?
Of course. First, SEPA is some small door to entrance to EU, and instant TIPS clone is second. We in Central Bank, at the beginning, I want to emphasize that it is for Montenegro. I'm not sure for Albania, they decide, I think, TIPS clone is a solution, but I want to emphasize that it is still an option that we are analyzing with our international partners, and there is no yet a decision to start with the implementation. But we in Central Bank recognize significant benefits that model can bring to Montenegro. On the first place, our citizens and our companies would be offered an identical service that users from the EU have through the TIPS. Second, when the conditions for the TIPS are met, TIPS clone already functional, transition from the TIPS clone to the real TIPS, it would be just one click away. And thirdly, what you mentioned, even though scope of this project now is local IPS, there is a potential for more. And in the next phase, instant payment could become also cross-border service, regional cross-border service, between all countries individually connected to the TIPS clone. But of course, this model is completely new, and its feasibility must be carefully checked before any further decisions are made. It's necessary to resolve some organizational questions, telco connection to the Bank of Italy, and clarify responsibility and roles of all participants. And we will see. Now in that project, beside Albania and Montenegro are North Macedonia, Kosovo, and Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Great, thank you. Just before we proceed with the topic, I know that we have several vendors here which are actually engaged in the topic of payments from different sides. We have of course, all national banks, but regional banks as well. So if there is any question from the audience for our guests, so please prepare. We have a microphone here, so we can give it to the audience. Robert, just now to see how actually this topics looks from the side of the vendor who actually implemented this system in Hungary, even much earlier than it was actually prescribed by the EU Council as something which is a must. As a preparation for your answer, for your question, which should somehow top up your presentation in terms of what are the biggest challenges for the banks from your experience. So on your presentation, I saw that you mentioned several things there which are very interesting in terms of testing periods and something like that. But here on this slide, you can see what actually EU countries said in their preparation for the starting of instant payments for 2025. So major EU banks recognized some of the maybe most challenging parts in terms of verification of payment services modules, in terms of implementing KYC standards and sanction standards for the instant payments. So we are talking about clearing times of several seconds, where everything that we are now actually doing in one day or several days must be done in less than this time, how much the biscuit needs to go down. So 24/7 availability and the downtimes. So everything of that was recognized actually here. What would you say from your experience, and what are the lessons learned maybe from the Hungarian market?
Yeah, thank you so much, and I can share obviously the experience from the Hungarian market and the EU market. One of the biggest challenges was in Hungary that we had to do it at the same time for all the banks, and they needed the expertise, which was non-existent at that time. So instant payments in 2017, when we started, was there in a few places. We were lucky, as Capsys, we were lucky enough because we were already working on instant payments project internationally before Hungary started to implement. So we were one of the few companies in Hungary who already knew about instant payments and what it takes. And it's not that simple. It's a complicated thing to implement. Of course, there are vendors, but you don't just want to rely on your vendors. So one of the big challenges was having the expertise in the market. Of course, we have the Banking Association organize the banks, so we had discussions and exchanges of information with the central bank and Giro. Giro is a central infrastructure in Hungary, so the banks could use each other's expertise. The other big challenge from a technical perspective from the banks is that usually the core banking systems are relatively old, meaning some of them are even 30 years old, and they are not prepared. And they were not created in the age when you have to be available 24/7 and you have to be quick. And for that reason, most of the banks in Hungary had to rearrange their IT architecture. They had to redesign the architecture.
So they had actually a separate project internally apart from the project where they participated within the country limits.
And another big challenge is that the regulation, they expect the regulation. What I see with countries, with the banks in Hungary and in the region, is that once they learn that there will be a regulation, then they say, okay, I'm going to wait for the regulation because the regulation is going to tell me what to do. Unfortunately, it's not true. The regulation will tell them how to connect to the central infrastructure and how to process, what are the rules, the reliabilities. It's not going to tell them how to do it internally. I would say that 80% of the project is internally in the bank, is the processing internally from a technical perspective, and also not just also from an operational perspective. I usually suggest the banks that if they look at instant payments, they could start with on-us payments, intra-bank payments. They don't need the central infrastructure actually to implement instant payments because it is the same thing internally. So they should, or they could start with rearranging preparing themselves for instant payments. Unfortunately, we don't really get through because they usually wait for the regulation. And if they wait for the regulation, when the pistol is already shot, then they have a very short time, and then they are always late. They have the procurement procedures, etc. So these are the big challenges. After implementing instant payments, is the next big challenge. If it's mandatory, like in Hungary, or if you implement it without a business case, then finding a business case, because that's the good thing about regulation. You don't need a business case. You can bring to the management and say, that's mandatory, I have to do it, and it gets top priority. But you still need a business case. So this is when the countries, the companies, the banks start actually leveraging. And this is why, underlining the previous slide, why we have growth. We actually have growth in both payments and cards. So instant payments or credit transfers and cards at the same time. So it's not really taking over from the cards. It's actually, there's increasing volume because people are using more their accounts. They are using their electronic devices. They are getting familiar with it. Obviously, we are getting older. So the young generation who's used to it is getting older, getting into the market. So now the banks are inventing, and not just the banks, a lot of service providers are inventing new ways, and that increases the volumes. We had seen last year the BLIK from Poland, which took over most of the e-commerce market. So, and last, one of the big challenges is, unfortunately, from the bank side, is a lot of regulations that they have to comply with. And of course, and coming to your previous question, I think it's an advantage to these countries to implement now, because once they join the EU, they will have to implement everything that is in the EU regulation, which is a lot. It's very hard to follow all the regulations. Even in Hungary, right now we have at least 4 or 5 regulatory projects running in terms of payment in the banks, because there are lots of things going on.
We will have one slide where actually EU countries already said how they're seeing. So we are talking about EU banks, how they're seeing actually the deadlines from the regulator, and how much it is already challenging for them, and not to talk about our region. I think we'll come back again to this story about costs, investments, and case. Do we need case or do we not need case for this kind of investment? It's an interesting story. But Ledia, let's come to the Albanian market and your aspirations. So in order to join the SEPA, there is already a set up infrastructure within EU in terms of clearing and settling mechanisms. We have a target 2 there. We have STEM 2. We have this Euro 1 system for clearing. So there are different mechanisms there. And the question is now how Western Balkan region will actually approach the SEPA standards, which are pretty much demanding and precisely set up. And where are you with the implementation in that part? So you're, as well as Montenegro, who is already announced that will receive as of 1st of January confirmation for the access of SEPA region, probably will be very soon on the list. Where are you with the implementation of the ISO 2022 and the restructuring of the payment system as a preparation for the SEPA and finally as a preparation for the instant?
Well, we are undergoing a fully in process of upgrade of our infrastructures to be speaking the same language as the infrastructures in the European Union. Just wanted to mention in combination with your previous question, the potential and the opportunity. This is an historical moment. It's just not a small work of the central banks done to be applying for SEPA. You can imagine that previously it was not possible to even apply for SEPA, meaning that this is some sort of an open door that the European Union is giving to the Western Balkans, of course, based also on the geopolitical developments, to make sure that we are integrated prior than being official members. And in our case, at least, we conceive that it's a very huge momentum in terms of integration. after the liberalization of visa, which is free movement of people, the entrance in the SEPA market is a huge milestone, concrete one. Despite the regulation and so blah, 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 this is a real thing. I mean, being part of such infrastructures, it's a train to not be missed from none of our countries. And it's something that will happen very soon. In comparison, there are some other countries who have applied previously, for example, Georgia or Moldova, which haven't yet received something. That a public statement from the European Commission and the EPC that Montenegro will join on 1st of January is very positive, and we need to be prepared, you are right. We are undergoing upgrades that need to be fully operational and live from January and March of the next year, so we are quite confident that our infrastructures will speak the language of SEPA schemes. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is also preparing the market because banks need to be guided, operationally speaking. For the package of SEPA application, the SEPA application means that you have to convince and to bring the trust to the authorities that your legislation is all put in place, that you as a country can act and do business in the same area as the Europeans do. So this is the exact exercise that our countries are doing for the accession. Meanwhile, technically speaking, these frameworks, they really need to be operational, meaning that those regulations have to be transposed and have to be translated in concrete technical, ISO, SEPA compliant, and that takes a lot of time, money, and resources. But it's something that we need to do. In our case, part of the application was a regulation called SEPA regulation with all the technical requirements. And there's a last disposition stating that from the moment of the SEPA accession green light, banks in Albania have but 6 months to be operationally ready for applying at least one SEPA scheme. Meaning that in some sort we are obligating them to be investing, which they are already doing in the forecasting for the next year because we expect such thing. We need to do training, we need to be putting them in contact not only with EPC but other service providers who might help them elevate the market. And this is something from the audience, probably if there are businesses who are in the area and of payments and of SEPA, they can cut the opportunity for the Montenegrin market and for the other regional countries to try and pitch the banks. This is something that will happen in the upcoming months. And banks are not all of them prepared for such movement and for such operational structure. So approach them, be part of national committees of payments that, for example, we organize twice or once a year. Be close to the banks and to the fintechs. You will probably see a rise on the payment institutions as long as the open banking goes into force. So there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of potential, not only for clients and businesses as users, but also for businesses as offering such services to be ready for Montenegrin banks.
Thank you. I would like to hear Andrija's opinion on the same topic. And one of the meetings of Western Balkan countries, I saw some interesting data on this topic, where actually it was recognized that for small and medium-sized enterprises, cost of cashless transactions are actually 5 to 6 times more expensive than within the EU. And then in terms of remittance costs, that just if you reduce that by 3%, it will lead to savings of €500 million for the Western Balkan countries. So we are actually talking about huge opportunities, something which is connected with the financial health and financial literacy that you mentioned at the beginning. So how the Central Bank of Montenegro is actually seeing this path toward full SEPA alignment?
After we joined the SEPA benefits, it's for all country, and that research said that that expensive cost between businesses in Western Balkan, it's huge problem, and our international partners, especially from World Bank, found solution for that and help us together with EU partners that through this first time that this project SEPA can be, how I say, for some country which isn't isn't included in SEPA area, and this is some experiment with us for first time, and we are glad to be part of that, and all signal we received from EU, especially these days, as the public has already been informed, our progress in this respect has been graded very positive, and hopes that Montenegro and other countries will join SEPA area to the end of this year. And after that, we have to start with separate procedure, especially for all banks planning to join SEPA scheme. They will start with it, and hopefully new payment experience will shortly come for our citizens and company. In accordance with it, we start from last year to prepare a market for everything what we expect after this positive answer from EU. And the first phase, which involved the extension of the SEPA to Montenegro, was primarily focused on central bank and state institution. And the second phase relates to banks, as they need to be technically prepared to connect to SEPA schemes. We now have a big project to involve the ISO and IBAN and everything in national code, but the topic is on cross-border that we have, that we find solution for these high fees between Western Balkans. During the 2024, we have several workshops organized by Central Bank and our international partners from World Bank, EU, EPC, to hear comparative solution for SEPA adherence, SEPA scheme novelties in a recent period. And this is all we aim to prepare the market for that. And to ensure full operability within the SEPA scheme for our banks. And those of banks who have support of groups should ideally use all the opportunities, and we, as a regulator, we accept them to lead the banking sector as a positive example. So when the first connections are established, international payments to and from SEPA countries will be faster, safer, and cheaper, and after that we accept significant benefits for all countries, for citizens and companies. And therefore, I conclude, I don't know if I time, we in Central Bank, and I personally believe that best is yet to come for payment service user in Montenegro.
Thank you. Before the final questions, since we are approaching the end of the panel, do we have maybe any questions from the audience?
Yes.
Okay, then I have
Yes,
there is one, I don't see. Aha.
Miloš.
There is one question. Can someone just give a mic there?
Yeah, it's going to.
Just a minute, too.
Hi. I'm Miloš Milošević from Presto, and the question is for Andrija from Central Bank of Montenegro. So my question is there a perspective of TPPs in Montenegro actually becoming direct participants in the payment system? And how do you see the potential of this broader participation of players in the market?
Thank you for your question. As you heard, the instant payment regulation oblige the banks and other payment service providers that have to be have to involve the instant payment system, and every PSP who already offer regular credit transfer to their clients must also offer instant credit transfer. Deadline for that, as Danijela said, is October for banks next year. But for instant payment, for payment institution and e-money institution is April 2027. And our answer of regulator, yes, we will approve direct participation payment institution and e-money institution. We exchange opinion with our partners in Europe about this topic. Our colleague from Croatia National Banks are preparing to amend the regulation in that part, so the payment institution and e-money institution would be direct participant in the payment system. Our colleague from Austrian National Bank, I think, start with pilot project about it, but final answer is yes, we will left you, all payment institution and money institution, but we need time. But I'm sure for in the next couple of years it would be reality.
Okay, thank you to our colleagues from FLECA for the question. Yes, you can.
Would you allow me to share the Hungarian experience on that?
Yeah, of course.
As I mentioned, we were involved in the original implementation in Hungary, PSD2 and instant payment at the same time. So open banking was implemented at the same time, and we were, as Capsys, were involved in the two largest implementation in Hungary. And open banking allows the TPPs to connect to the banks. And of course, the Hungarian implementation of instant payments has three services, as I mentioned: instant payments, proxy IDs, some secondary identifiers like mobile numbers and email addresses to be used as addressing, and request to pay. And Giro, at the beginning in 2020, opened up the request to pay service to third parties. So third parties are allowed to initiate and also to receive, but mostly initiate request to pays, which allows the utility companies and the like, or invoicing companies or online invoicing services to initiate request to pays. It is an existing service. It is small. The usage is small. There are some reasons for that. It is catching up. Proxy IDs are not that much used. The Hungarian experience is that the biggest use case for open banking is AISP, so account information, to retrieve account information from the banks for purposes. Payment initiation is not big in Hungary. Practically, we have zero payment initiations by third parties. For the central infrastructure, you must have an account with the central bank to be able to initiate or receive a payment. So initiation and receiving of payments is not directly for third parties in the solution. They have to come in the infrastructure. They have to go to their banks. But this is what we think with this quick. I hope it was
yeah, helpful. Thank you. I mean, we were near to open the huge next topic about connection of open banking and instant payment system and what are the use cases there. But we need to close. I have some remarks from the backstage. Can you just, for the close, say from your experience, we have a slide here about the investment, which EU banks actually recognize that the scope for the integration with the instant payments requirements. So it actually, within the percentages, you can see that about more than 60% said that it will be sized of the investment between €500,000 and €3 million. So there are huge investments, and on the long run, I believe that actually your practice is showing and your experience is showing that there is actually a business case behind this huge investment. So what are your opinion on the basis of the experience of the Hungarian market? And in terms of, just shortly, one comment in terms of this time horizon, regulators already said what they expect. But what actually in practice is that the bank actually need, what is the time horizon? And then we can wrap up.
Okay, I'm really trying to keep it short. It's very hard for me because I like to explain in all details. So first of all, about the investment, the size of the investment depends on the readiness of the bank, the infrastructure, because the majority of the cost is going to be renewing their infrastructure, not connecting to the central infrastructure, because that can be done relatively easily. So depending on their current situation, which actually it is due anyway. So they would have to renew their infrastructure, they just keep postponing it usually. This is what I experienced. So the majority of the investment is going into that. And so the preparation and the renewal of the IT infrastructure. About the return. In Hungary, and in the EU, according to the EU regulation, instant payments must be priced the same as the regular credit transfers. So you don't really generate new revenue by just implementing instant payments. You generate new revenue and return if you implement new solutions like the Quick in Hungary. In fact, it was also a regulation in Hungary coming with Quick that for the payer, banks must not charge fees to be competitive with cards. So they actually have to make money on the merchants, on the payee side, which is an existing use case. This is, you can look at it as practically as rearranging the payment market for the acquirers, because then those who don't have an acquiring business, they could implement a new kind of an acquiring business on top of instant payments, because you don't need to implement the card rails. So that is basically the best use case. And of course, lots of banks in Hungary are dealing with fintechs and establishing their own fintechs and working with SMEs. So that this is also a way of generating revenue and return. The timeline is tricky. The implementation itself, as I said, it took 3 years in Hungary. It took 4 more years in Hungary to implement the overlay service. So we had 7 years from the beginning. And now it is turning, now it is generating revenue with the new payment solution.
Thank you very much for your quick answer. Thank you to my dear panelists. Thank you to audience for patience. And just to close the panel, I hope that next year in infintech we will have a possibility to see here maybe a use case from some bank, National Bank of Montenegro, and one commercial bank of Albania, a use case of SEPA implementation, maybe instant implementation. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you.